What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? Well, it's the holiday season, and that means it's time to break down the 12 gifts that we want the D-backs to receive both this offseason and the 2025 regular season.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas, multimedia journalist, and I'm a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there, you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, the NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, we are talking a whole lot about the holiday and the Christmas season as we do our 12 days of Christmas for the D-backs, discuss 12 gifts that we want to see the D-backs receive both this offseason and next regular season. So a whole bunch I want to talk to you guys about on today's podcast. But first, I want to say thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. But now let's get into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. And let's discuss the 12 days of Christmas for the D-backs. And we'll start the first thing. We're going to start with offseason stuff and work our way into the regular season. The first gift that we want to see the D-backs get under their tree. Of course, Christmas is already over, but we're still going to do this exercise and topic. The first thing that we want to see for the rest of this offseason is another elite back and arm. Now, we could talk about the top of that tier for eliteness with the Ryan Hesleys, right? A Devin Williams was someone that we were really interested in, would have loved to bring in, but I think we'll all settle for Ryan Hesley, who is coming off a year where he led the NL in saves, a guy that could throw, triple digits just about, and just really elite. Strikeout numbers, all of that. Like, this is someone that you would definitely want as your closer. You put him in with the puck and the Martinez. Absolutely nasty. And even if you don't get the Ryan Hesley type, even getting some of these other really good back end relievers to either be your closer or like your seventh or eighth inning guy, like, I think that would also be perfect for the D-backs. Yes, I would love a guy like Ryan Hesley who could just bring in and make your everyday closer, but I also think it's okay if the D-backs went with some sort of closer by committee and it was like Martinez a lot, and maybe sometimes it was player X who we might add this offseason. Maybe sometimes it's AJ Puck. Like, I'm also okay with the committee approach because I think the D-backs can have like a three-headed monster of dudes who could potentially close games for Arizona in 2025, because there's also guys like Jeff Hoffman out there who I think would be a really interesting add to Arizona. He's the kind of guy that the D-backs would definitely like to target. He's got the kind of skill set that the D-backs would love to add to their team. I definitely would love Jeff Hoffman in the back end of the bullpen. He's been really incredible with Philadelphia the last couple years. I think Kirby Yates is one of the most underrated players on the market right now, because Kirby Yates was one of the best closers in Major League Baseball for a time there. The stuff he was doing with the San Diego Padres and stuff. And then he missed 2021 due to injury. Hasn't really pitched a ton in 2022, pitched a good amount in 23 for the Braves, but they didn't care, I guess. Then the Rangers picked him up in 24. Fantastic year this past year. All-star, top 8 in Cy Young voting, a 1.17 ERA, 33 saves. And I don't think there's a lot of buzz about Kirby Yates because he's 38 years old, or at least he's going to be. He's still one of the best relievers in the sport. This is a guy with 12 and a half strikeouts per 9 for his career and was at that mark last year at age 37. So Kirby Yates is definitely a guy I would like. David Robertson too. Like, there's still so many good back end relievers out there that I would love the D-backs to go after. So number one on my 12 days of Christmas, elite back end arm. Number two, right-handed DH because we got Josh Naylor, lefty, to come in and replace Christian Walker, who was a right-handed bat. So already you're swapping right-handed power for left-handed power by bringing in Josh Naylor. You lost Jock Peterson already. Of course, that's a left-handed bat. And you're virtually replacing him with Pavin Smith. So right now, your first base DH options are first base lefty Josh Naylor and backup first baseman DH lefty Pavin Smith. That's why you need to go out there and get another DH slash maybe backup first baseman. I don't think they need to play first base. I think it would be fine if you had two lefties at first base and Pavin Smith and Josh Naylor. Obviously, it would be nice if you could get a right-handed bat maybe that could play a little first base, but I think it would be fine if you could just get another right-handed bat to complement the DH of a Pavin Smith, and then maybe it could be, backup shortstop, backup second baseman, fourth outfielder type. Like, I think that would also be fine if the D-backs went in that direction as well. They just really need one more right-handed bat. It would be nice if it had a little pop. Would love to bring back Randall Grichuk, of course. I think a guy like Jackson Profar is really interesting. Someone that could play first base, infield, outfield, really all over, coming off a really good season. The interesting thing about Profar, switch hitter too, that crush from both sides of the plate. Then a guy who is a little bit older, but I still think he has enough for at least one more season left in the tank. And he's definitely not playing in the field, which I think helps as well. JD Martinez is still someone I would like. I would just want to see JD Martinez a full year in a D-backs uniform because he had that fantastic half season after the trade deadline, and that was it. The greatest 2 months in like D-backs franchise history. I just want a full year of JD Martinez to see if he can replicate a little bit of that pizzazz and that specialness he found with Arizona, because those are two terrible adjectives to describe his run with the D-backs. But JD Martinez, kind of up and down the last few years, really elite in 23, kind of a down year in 24, but I still think he has enough in the tank to at least be half of a DH to Pavin Smith. Number 3, trade Monty. We've discussed it. Jordan Montgomery owed a lot of money. I don't think anyone would be upset if you could trade Monty for an interesting reliever or just some kind of piece that could be, if you could trade him for a major leaguer that could help you, like maybe it doesn't have to be like a starting player, but even if it's someone that's like a really good backup, like super utility guy, like, like Brock Holt back in the day, or like a Ben Zobrist is probably too rich, but just someone along those lines that's like good, not playing every day, but could just kind of play all over, like a Jackson Profar. Yeah, maybe not the all-star season Profar, but someone along those lines I could feel good about plugging and playing him at a whole bunch of different spots and him being a positive contributor. So if you could trade Jordan Montgomery this offseason with how Ken Kendrick has blasted him to the media, I think that would be good. And then the final thing I want to talk about in segment number 1, I think Josh Naylor could get pretty close to the Christian Walker offensive production next year. Yes, I still believe Walker's better, but also Walker's 6-7 years older than Naylor. You look at Naylor's numbers coming off last year, 31 bombs, over 100 ribbies in 150 games. This is a guy the last 3 years. Offensive numbers have been just pretty steady, pretty good. Seems like he's going on an upward trajectory. Like, he doesn't strike out a ton, solid walk rate, good hard contact numbers. Like, I think the recipe, the ingredients is there for Josh Naylor offensively to at least be like 90% of what Christian Walker was, if not exactly what Christian Walker was, at just an offensive player when looking at the numbers. Like last year, 30 bombs, 100 ribbies, the 776 OPS, like raised that by 15 points, and you basically had a Christian Walker type season just from like the straight offensive batting profile. So I think Josh Naylor could be very close to a Christian Walker season next year, and that would be a great gift from Santa if he's able to deliver. Now we got some more gifts that we want to see Santa deliver for the regular season 2025, and we'll discuss that in segment number 2. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up the W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points Each team will score. It's thrilling. My favorite thing to do on the FanDuel Sportsbook app is the same game parlay. When I see that Arizona Cardinals are playing, sometimes I like to do a little Cardinals money line. Give me a little James Conner over on rushing touchdowns, and give me Kyler Murray anytime touchdown. When that 3-leg hits, it brings a big smile to my face. So if you want a big smile on your face, just visit fanduel.com to join today. That's fanduel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more at FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. Let's get back to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, and let's discuss some more gifts that we want to see the D-backs receive during their 12 days of Christmas in 2025. The first one was elite backhand arm for our first gift. Our second gift, right-handed DH. Our third gift, trade Jordan Montgomery. And our fourth gift, Josh Naylor, matching the offensive production of Christian Walker next year. Our fifth gift, kind of along the same lines of the first base talk, but Pavin Smith. How about being the real deal? I don't know if the 60 game sample size we saw from Pavin Smith, if you can actually extrapolate that over 130 games, because if you can, that would be very insane. I mean, the 896 OPS, I feel like there's no way you could extrapolate that over 130 games, but somehow that 547 slugging, if you could keep that around 480 over 130 games, like 9 home runs in 60 games for Pavin Smith, like if you're telling me he's like a 20 home run guy now, if you gave him 135 games, like that's a game changer. We thought Pavin Smith, his career high in 2021, 11 home runs. We thought he was going to be tapped at that. I thought 2021 was kind of like the best version you could get from Pavin. He batted 267. He had the 11 home runs. He played 145 games, and he still had a negative WAR because of his defense. But if you're telling me he's just a DH and he's putting up the slugging he did last year with a little bit of pop, some of the clutchness he had as well, I'm not sure. I believe the 2024 that Pavin Smith had, but if we were able to get a gift of him actually replicating or being anywhere near replicating the production he had this past year over a larger sample size, like, yeah, that guy is not as good as Jock Peterson, but a very nice replacement considering the production Jock Peterson gave us last year, the expectations and the stuff we've seen from Pavin Smith the last few years. If he's able to replicate anything he did in 2024 over 100 game sample size in 2025, like, yeah, that would be a very, very nice replacement for like the Jock Petersons of the world, who was a major offensive factor last year. So Pavin Smith, being the real deal, could be a major X factor for the D-backs in 2025. So that's the fifth gift on my list. Number 6, second half continuation from Corbin Carrol. Corbin last year, we know, first half struggled. We always talked about Eugenio Suarez in the first half he had last year, right? Because he was quite literally, you look at those first 81 games, arguably the worst player in Major League Baseball. I think he had like a top 3 worst WRC plus, if not like top 2, top 1. Like, it was really bad for Eugenio. But you know who else was bad? If you go look at the first 81 games last year, you know who was right behind Eugenio? Corbin Carroll. He was like 6th worst WRC plus those first 80 games last year. Like, the Carroll numbers were bad in the first half of the year. 88 games last year, 213 average, a 635 OPS in those first 88 games started, 94 games played overall, only 5 home runs, still had 18 stolen bases, but only 5 home runs. Imagine how many steals he would have had if he actually got on base, because he only had a 301 OBP. So imagine if he actually got on base during that time. Because in the second half of the season, in 64 games played, 58 games started, he went from 5 to 17 home runs despite playing 30 less games started. He had 1 less stolen base, and his slugging went from 334 to 568. His power stroke was rediscovered in the second half of the season. He was smashing home runs left and right, triples, doubles. It did not matter. The ball was flying off the bat of Corbin Carroll in the second half of the season. And if we could get that continuation of that second half into next year, fantastic. Because if you remember Corbin Carroll's rookie year, right? We know how strong it was, how incredible it was. Top 5 in MVP voting. But what we forget is, if you split the first half and the second half of Carroll's season last year, pre and All-Star break. The first half, pre All-Star break, he had like 18 home runs those first 90 games. We thought Corbin Carrol was going to be like a 40-40 guy last year based off the first half of the season. And then the power really dipped in the second half of the year, ended up with the 25 home runs or whatever when it felt like he was going to hit like 35 last year. And then entering this past year, the power continued to not be there. And now it's kind of like, is this a 100-game sample size now where Corbin Carroll just hasn't displayed any sort of power? It was kind of crazy. And now, second half of 2024, we saw the power again. Looked a lot more like first half of 2023, Corbin Carroll. And so, if we're getting that guy in 2025, like that's a superstar. That's an MVP candidate. And if that power stroke of Carroll is officially back, then yeah, losing Jock Peterson, the Christian Walkers, like all that hurts. But if you get the 2023 Corbin Carroll with a slight upgrade in 2025, mixed with the Kettels and the Morenos and the Gurriels, like, yeah, Josh Naylor, like this can still be a pretty strong offense for next year, but definitely need Corbin Carroll's second half to continue for the full season in 2025. So that is gift number 6. Gift number 6. Gift number 7. Moreno, Gabriel moves into the tier 1 of two-way catchers in Major League Baseball because there are guys like JT Realmuto who are two-way catchers but seem to be kind of in the decline, right? A William Contreras, elite offense player, not bad defensive player, but I think there's a little bit more question about his defense as some other guys like Will Smith, another elite offensive catcher and a really good defensive catcher, but is he considered like Buster Posey dual threat level? Like I think Moreno could be on track to maybe being the best like dual threat guy since like JT Realmuto or like a Buster Posey, because we know Moreno's defense is elite, took probably a little bit step back last year defensively, but still no one's running on Moreno. People are still scared of Moreno. Offensively is where I really want him to be unleashed, because there was a little period, a little stretch last year where it felt like Moreno's offense was really coming on. It felt like he was like a major factor in the middle of the lineup. As soon as he got bumped to number 2 in the lineup, it felt like this offense was really starting to take off. And I want to know if Moreno could do that for the full course of a season. Maybe with guys like Christian Walker gone, Jock Peterson gone, like maybe Moreno is the number 2 hitter for the D-backs going forward. Like maybe it's like a Marte, Moreno, Carroll, like 1, 2, 3, where you switch Marte and Carroll depending on like who's on the mound, and then you can still go like Josh Naylor, number 4. Like maybe Moreno is your number 2 hitter going forward. Last year, in only 16 games, 65 at bats, so not a huge sample size, but a 415 average and a 1075 OPS. When batting second last year, runners in scoring position over a 900 OPS. Like the offensive numbers were really strong for Moreno. They just didn't sustain very long because of injury. It felt like whenever he got going, he got hurt. So if we could get a full season Moreno, offense unleash, or maybe he's batting at the top of the lineup with the defense he already has, the acumen he already has defensively, I think Moreno could move into that tier 1, like the top of the tier 1 of dual threat catchers in Major League Baseball. Then the final thing I want to discuss for segment number 2 before we get into our final 4 gifts in segment number 3, another major X factor that I would love to receive in 2025, Jake McCarthy. How about him not being a fluke? Because now we have 2 different years of Jake McCarthy being a really good player for the Arizona Diamondbacks. You got 2022, his rookie of the year, where he finished 4th, 283 average, 769 OPS, 23 stolen bases. And then you got this past year, 285 average, 749 OPS, 25 steals. In both of those years, he played 99 games in 2022, 142 games in 2024. Slightly better as a rookie, but basically has been a 2-win player both of those seasons. Positive, speed, elite, defense, solid, and can hit for average, which is good enough, and has learned to hit from both sides of the plate. Has a switch hitter, but against opposing pitchers, which makes him really tantalizing. Last year, 284 average against lefties, 286 average against righties. There was no power whatsoever against lefties, but at least he hit for average. We know his speed, his base skills, all very good. His contact skills, all very good. Was also incredible in the clutch last year. And now he's been really good 2 of the last 3 seasons. And so if he could do it again and prove he's not a fluke, like Jake McCarthy now turns himself into a true weapon for Arizona as a guy where we actually have faith and belief in him. We don't always just have to be like, oh, Jake McCarthy. Do we want to put Alec Thomas in the lineup over him? Do we want to put, start Jorge Barrosa? Like, felt like Jake McCarthy the last couple of years was more like the 4th, 5th outfielder for the D-backs, right? There was always Alec Thomas or someone else that you might try to get more opportunities in over Jake McCarthy. But if he once again proves this past year wasn't a fluke, like maybe all of a sudden you're like, Jake McCarthy, you're the building block for Arizona. It's you, Corbin Carrol, and then maybe you try to trade like Lourdes Gurriel or something. Or maybe Jake McCarthy. Now, since we know you're not a fluke, your value around the league has raised so much, we can get a real pitcher back for you, a real prospect back for you. Like, or if anything, you just stay in Arizona with the roster we already have, and then maybe you're our 4th outfielder, DH type, like whatever it is. Jake McCarthy has been so good for Arizona 2 of the last 3 years, so good last year for Arizona with that with that outfield offense struggling in the first half last year. Jake McCarthy really stepped up in a big way. If what he did this past year and in 2022, if he just continues to prove that he's not a fluke player, he's really this guy with good contact skills, good speed, solid defense, like that's a real player in Major League Baseball. He's been a positive contributor for Arizona, and I hope it continues in 2025. Now we'll discuss our final 4 gifts that the D-backs should receive in segment number 3. And if you're looking to buy tickets to an upcoming sport or an event, then the best place to do that, of course, is going to be Game Times, because Game Time is the best place for last minute deals on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. They have this feature called all-in pricing. When you toggle this feature on, it shows you your total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You could get a panoramic view from your seat before you buy. They also have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. Let's get back to the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. We're doing our 12 days of Christmas for the D-backs. Our first gift, a lead backhand arm. Our second gift, right-handed DH. Our third gift, trade Jordan Montgomery. Our fourth gift, Josh Naylor, matching Christian Walker's offensive production. Fifth gift, Pavin Smith, 2024 season for real. Our sixth gift, second half continuation 2025 for Corbin Carrol. Seventh gift, Gabriel Moreno enters tier 1 for dual threat catchers. Eighth gift, Jake McCarthy, not a fluke. Now let's enter gift number 9, and this is a gift that we haven't really seen on Arizona too much. This is kind of a new gift. This is a new toy that we're getting. Jordan Lawler, he's had a couple cups of coffee with Arizona, but next year is the year where he really plays and really contributes to Arizona. He didn't play at all in 2024 after debuting in 23, has dealt with a lot of injuries, but I think we all know when Lawler plays in the minor league system, he crushes it. The numbers for Lawler down there is really good. The issue is he's always hurt for some reason. The health for him had just been really, really unlucky. It's been really, just tough to see because our best prospect, but when he plays, he's good. Only 23 games last year total. Only 12 games total in Reno, AAA, 49 at-bats. But in those 49 at-bats, he had 18 hits, 3 doubles, 2 home runs, 12 ribbies. Like, he was really good. He's been really good so far, 2023. He was also really good in AAA in 16 games, 67 at-bats. He had 24 hits. He had 5 home runs. Like, he's crushed AAA pitching the last couple years, and we know AAA out there really inflated stats for offense, but Lawler has proved offense. He's crushing it so far in AAA in that really elevated system, right? And we know his defense is really strong. So I think it's time to probably just give him that call up. Kevin Newman's with the Angels. Geraldo Perdomo is very good. We all love him as a starting shortstop, but he's definitely going to need some rest sometimes. Ketel Marte, also, if you want to make him the DH a little bit more, could put Jordan Lawler in at second base or put Perdomo in at second base, Lawler at shortstop. Like, I think Lawler could just come in and help some of the ease and burden on some of those starting shortstops and at least be a solid defensive player. Now, Blaze Alexander gets his defense together. He has a real opportunity to be a backup infielder as well. But I think 2025 is Jordan Lawler time. Gift number 10. How about this? I feel like I've had this prediction like 8 times already and still waiting for it to really come true. Brandon Pfaadt finally puts it together in 2025. I remember my big second half prediction for this past year post All-Star break was Brandon Pfaadt finishing like top 10 in Cy Young voting because based off the first half he had, I thought Brandon Pfaadt I was hoping would get better in the second half because I thought the first half was a major improvement from what we saw in 2023. And I don't think anyone would deny that. Look at the numbers, a 3.97 ERA in the first half this past year, but a 240 average allowed, a sub 700 OPS allowed. Like the numbers are really solid for Brandon Pfaadt, a 115 whip. Like the numbers are fine, but in the second half, it definitely felt like he hit a wall with the Gallons and the Kellys and the Erods and the Montes and everyone that rotation pretty much hurt. Pfaadt was the most reliable, the most leaned on pitcher for Arizona for a while. And I think he hit a wall in the second half. That's why he had a 5.93 ERA in his last 13 starts of the season after cruising for most of that first half where he looked really good, looked really strong, and then all of a sudden he just started to tank in a big way. He still has that complex where he could pitch 4 or 5 really clean innings and then has one massive blow up inning where he gives up 4 or 5 earned runs and just destroys the ERA. Like he still has those kind of starts in those blow up innings, but if he can work on that, I think Brandon Pfaadt could put it all together in 2025 and have a really incredible season with the D-backs where he could finish top 10 in Cy Young voting, but I won't even put that much pressure on him. Number 11, I think the D-backs will have the most devastating 7-8-9 combination in the National League next year. Now, that's also contingent on gift number 1, the D-backs getting an elite back-end arm, because if you get Ryan Hesley or any of the Hoffmans or Kirby Yates, combined with the Martinez and the AJ Pucks, like, yeah, why can't the D-backs have the most dangerous 7-8-9 combination? Like, if you're telling me you have AJ Puck, 6'7", throwing 97, 98 consistently, painting the outside edge, nasty slider, coming in as your 7th inning guy. Then you have Justin Martinez, who's throwing 102, 103, 104 with that nasty split finger down the middle. And all of a sudden, you have Ryan Hesley just coming in, arguably the best closer in the National League, shutting the door in the 9th inning. Like, tell me that's not the most dangerous, the most deadly 7-8-9 combination in the sport. I know you could probably find better ones, but even right now, if you go on FanGraphs, they think the D-backs have the 11th highest projected WAR for their bullpen in all of Major League Baseball next year. If you just look for the National League, actually, the D-backs are ranked 4th. So right now, the FanGraphs think the D-backs are going to have the 4th best bullpen as it currently stands based off WAR entering 2025. So that makes us feel really good as D-backs fans. So I would just say that's something to keep an eye on. I think the D-backs should have an elite 7-8-9 combination, depending on if they get that one final reliever. Then the final gift for 2025, I think the D-backs are going to have a top 5 rotation based off ERA in the National League next year. Now, there are some really good ERAs in the National League. I will admit, I still think the Phillies are going to be good with Wheeler, Nola, Sanchez, Suarez, and now Jesus Luzardo. Like, that might be the best rotation. Dodgers, Snell, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Ohtani, got Gonsolin, May, Bobby Miller. Like, I'll give you those two over the D-backs. The Braves, I think it's a little bit closer. You got the reigning Cy Young Award winner. Ronaldo Lopez is coming off a crazy year. Really, the X factor is Spencer Strider just going to come back and like I don't know what his timeline is exactly. Is he going to pitch opening day and just be fine? Like if he's fine with Chris Sale and Ronaldo, like maybe above the D-backs, but I would say that's a bit of a question mark. And then looking at some other teams like the Pirates, I mean, Paul Skeens is a beast. I really like Jared Jones. I'm not a big Mitch Keller guy. Like, I would say the D-backs over them. Like, really, you look at the National League and it's like definitely the Phillies, definitely the Dodgers. You could make an argument for the Braves. I don't think I would make one for the Pirates. I don't think I would make one, I think the Marlins probably have a better case than the Pirates, to be honest. Definitely wouldn't put the Brewers above the D-backs. I wouldn't put the Cardinals. I think the Mets are interesting. I don't know if I really trust like Minaya. I can't just keep disrespecting him. I don't really like Frankie Montes that much. I do really like Kodai Senga, but tell me why the D-backs can't have a top 5 rotation based off ERA next year. Gallen could definitely be sub 3. Kelly's going to be right around 3. I'm telling you, if Fott puts it all together, why can't that be like a 370 ERA guy? Then again, Erod and Monty, if both of them or if one of them's on this D-back staff, there is potential for a major bounce back for one of those guys next year in Arizona. And if Ryan Nelson proves 2024 wasn't a fluke, wasn't real, like that is 4 or 5 legit starters the D-backs can have in their rotation next year. And I think their rotation is going to be the reason why the D-backs bounce back in 2025. And so, yes, those are our 12 days of Christmas for the D-backs. And if the D-backs get all those gifts this offseason and next regular season, I think we'll get back to the postseason. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks, or not tomorrow. Come back next week for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. Enjoy your holiday season. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy,